Hey everybody, Tony D and Little Joan here with a final hot take. I hadn't shown you this, but this is the press conference with Rudy Giuliani. This is in Philadelphia. It
The Hyundai Tucson.
seriously a commercial. This is from the Independent, and it's a bit of a low key in terms of the setup. As you can see, this shot. They stayed on this shot for quite a long time. There was like a hose in the shot. I showed up and I watched this live. Now this guy here is a poll watcher. These two guys here, they're poll watchers in Philadelphia who were denied their rights. And there's Rudy in the background. He's coming in. So what he's going to talk about is the fraud going on and the lawsuits. Oh, and that guy too. He's a firebrand. I forget what his name is. But
wow, what a beautiful day! Thank you.
Wow, that is a good microphone.
So I'm here on behalf of the Trump campaign, as an attorney for the president, to describe to you the first part of a situation that is extremely troubling. First of all, for the state of Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and then for a number of other states. And these lawsuits will be brought starting on Monday.
Monday's the day.
But the first time it was discovered was here in Pennsylvania just a couple of days ago. The people you see behind me are just a few of about, I'd say, 50 to 60 poll watchers who will all testify that they were uniformly, deprived of their right to inspect any single part of the mail-in ballot.
That's big. I mean,
you know,
they're going to have to get testimony from all of them.
A source of some degree of skepticism, if not a lot of skepticism, as being innately prone to fraud.
This is on the Independent,
New York
by
Times
the way.
had written that 10 years ago under other circumstances.
The Independent
changed their mind
is a UK
once
paper.
it was a situation involving President Trump. Congresswoman Jordan, in her vast and compendious review of various forms of voter fraud, cited mail-in ballots as the most prone to fraud. With all that, you would have expected there'd be a high degree of security and a high degree of inspection that would be provided for mail-in ballots. Instead, in the wisdom of the officials, Democrat officials here in the city that's been Democrat for 60 years and has a very long history of voter fraud, documented history of voter fraud, instead of going to a high degree of care to allow inspections of the mail-in ballots, there was no inspection of a single mail-in ballot. Those mail-in ballots could have been for anybody. Those mail-in ballots could have been for anybody they wrote in. Those mail-in ballots could have been written the day before by the Democratic Party hacks that were all over the convention center.
See, these guys are going to be out after
not
this.
A single one was inspected, as the law required. Even when a court order was obtained to allow the Republican inspectors to get 6 feet closer, they moved the people counting the ballots 6 further feet away.
Rudy's mad.
It's really simple. If you have nothing to hide with these mail-in ballots, you allow inspection. I mean, this is common knowledge, common practice in the examination of absentee ballots, which happens all the time. Take out the absentee ballot, you open it up, the Republican looks at it, the Democrat looks at it. If nobody objects, you put it in the pile.
Trump's really lucky to have Rudy on his side, I got to say. He's good at explaining stuff.
That's what's done for absentee ballots, which have the extra security of having signatures you can match.
And check out those rings.
Here,
there's some nice rings.
Insecure method of voting. No Republican got a chance to look at that ballot. Some of the ballots you will see look suspicious. From very far away, they look like same pen, possibly same handwriting. We can't say that because we never got to see it. Now, you're also going to find that way across, on the other side of the state, there is a similar situation in Pittsburgh involving 300,000 ballots that were uninspected, unreviewed, not observed by a single Republican.
This is draining the swamp.
Not a single one.
If these Democratic machines are broken, where are they going to get their votes?
A friend of mine says, I don't believe in conspiracies, but I also don't believe in coincidences. Kind of funny that all Republicans were rejected here, and all Republicans were rejected in Pittsburgh, and it amounts to about, just about the 700,000 votes that President Trump was ahead by 2 days ago that disappeared.
Where'd they
We
go?
have no way of knowing, because we were deprived of the right to inspect, if a single one of those ballots is legitimate. That is unheard of, it's illegal, it's unconstitutional, and we will be bringing an action challenging that.
Boom!
And I emphasize to you, it's only one of the many other infirmities in this election.
Boomity
I know
boom.
this city has a sad history of voter fraud.
It's true.
After all, Joe Frazier is still voting here. Kind of hard since he died 5 years ago, but Joe continues to vote. If I recall correctly, Joe was a Republican, so maybe I shouldn't complain. But we should go see if Joe is voting Republican or Democrat now from the grave. Also, Will Smith's father has voted here twice since he died. I don't know how he votes because his vote is secret. In Philadelphia, they keep the votes of dead people secret. At least that is something that you can be commended for. I'm not attacking the people of Philadelphia. I'm attacking the decrepit Democratic machine,
Well, they live in
which has a lot
Philadelphia.
of other reasons to be attacked. It's been around for 65 years. You keep electing the same people. The city gets no better. The crime goes way through the roof. The riots you have, the police stand by and watch it, not because of the police, because you have a mayor that lets them stand by and watch it. You got a district attorney who lets people go free. You are poorly served, ladies and gentlemen of Philadelphia. And then you got a political machine. Mayors who let riots take place, district attorneys who set criminals free. I don't think they're going to care much about ballot fraud.
Boom. I got to interrupt. Man, he is just smacking these guys down. And it's no wonder none of the major networks aired this press conference. The Independent had it live. I tried to find it on C-SPAN. I couldn't find it. Now they have it on there. I guess they put it on later. But where was ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox? They aired Biden's speech.
This is outrageous. An enormously important contest with a very, very suspect method of voting. There was no security. Zero. The people of this city, people of this country, have no assurance at all that those ballots were actually cast. They would have to have been almost unanimously cast for Joe Biden in order to catch up.
It's true. It's true. There's a lot of fraud here. I mean, that's all there is to it. And thank God, Rudy seems to be on top of it. And it seems like they were very prepared for this. I mean, they got over 50 witnesses. My advice to anybody who got caught up in this, you think you're in law resistance or whatever, come forward now. Now is the time to throw your supervisor under the bus so you don't go to prison for 3.5 years.
And let me have one or two of the people. Let me emphasize, this is only 2 or 3 of about 50 people so far that have given us statements, affidavits,
All right.
recordings.
I'm going to skip these guys.
We're going to have many witnesses.
Not because they're not credible, but
Not a
because,
small case. It could be a big case.
it's a long one.
But I wanted you to get
It's
the
2
flavor
different
of it here in
guys.
Philadelphia.
One's sort of just a
Because we
Trump
also have
fan,
to
and the other guy's a lawyer.
alert the people of Pittsburgh that the same fraud
I'm going to skip
was done
ahead.
to them as here. And I'll also add Same thing was done in Georgia. The same thing was done in Michigan. The same thing was done in North Carolina. Seems to me somebody from the Democratic National Committee sent out a little note that said, don't let the Republicans look at those mail-in ballots.
Ooh, they find that email.
Not in the big Democratic hack cities that we control.
Did these people forget that the NSA can see everything?
We've done a lot to destroy those cities. Now we're going to destroy their right to vote. So let's start off first.
All right, I'm going to skip these guys.
Now to count them, I could have brought about 50 with me, but I didn't do it for two reasons. 50 is too many. Number two, they're afraid. They're afraid of being publicly identified. They're willing to testify in court.
That's big.
They're afraid there'll be repercussions against them.
They're willing to testify in court under oath.
Has already had threats. Jeremy Mercer, who was in charge, has already given a statement twice, both here in Philadelphia, the day after the election.
Now I'm going to skip over to this next guy, who's also a bit of a firebrand. I forget his name, but he talks about some of the malfeasance.
They figured out in Pittsburgh they should do the same thing that happened here.
But you should watch the entire thing.
I'm sorry. I'm going to ask Corey Lewandowski to explain his experience.
Corey, this is this guy.
Well, I appreciate you being here today. Let me just give you one concrete example, not anecdotal, but concrete example of what we believe to be valid voter fraud in the state of Pennsylvania.
And the reporters apparently were on the sidelines trying to ask a lot of questions and being very combative. Surprisingly so. You know, if this had happened and you reverse the parties, and this had happened in the 70s, this would be the biggest story ever, and it's nowhere.
I draw your attention to an obituary listed for one Denise Ondish in Allegheny County. Born 9/10/1946. Deceased 10/22/2020. Her application to vote was received on 10/23, the day after she died. It was then mailed by the county back to her on 10/24/2020, 2 days after she had legally passed away. And the ballot was then received back at the county office on November 2nd, 2020. And when you go to the Secretary of State's website today, it says that she voted in this election, effective November 2nd, 2020, a full 9 days after Miss Ondish of Allegheny County passed away.
I wonder who she voted for.
This is not, excuse me, this is not empirical, this is not anecdotal. This is hard evidence, and if you do your jobs from the media, I'm sure you'll find additional examples, and this will be one of many that we will be filing with the court. Thank you very much.
Also,
you can hear the reporters yelling in the background.
That there's no evidence. The people standing behind me are called witnesses. They will eventually, soon hopefully, appear in court and give this testimony, because we're going to file a federal lawsuit that will cover here and Pittsburgh, and we will have as many witnesses as the court needs. Right now,
that's evidence.
As many as 90 witnesses. That's called evidence that there was a uniform deprivation of the right to inspect, which constitutes a fraud on the people of Pennsylvania, constitutes a fraud on all legitimate voters. Any illegitimate vote cancels a legitimate vote.
Yeah, I mean, what that guy just read, I mean, a dead person voted in the election. He has evidence. The vote was received. It was mailed out to her after she died, and then it was received. That's evidence.
And the burden of proof as to whether it's a legitimate ballot or not, when it's a mail-in ballot, is on the person proposing the ballot, because there's no other way to justify it. Well, they made it impossible to view those ballots, and there can be only one conclusion as to why you would make it so impossible. Because many, many of them were fraudulent. And you just don't lose leads like that without corruption. And you're in a city in which voter fraud is professional. It's not just amateur. Some places may be amateur.
Well, I would argue they've been doing it so long they got sloppy.
It's a professional place for voter fraud.
And it was so well known,
because you have a decrepit
it was easy for them to
Democrat
set them up.
that you have had in power for 60 years, and it's the reason why you have voter fraud. It's the reason why you have so much crime. It's the reason why you're leading the country in some categories of crime, because these people are not helping the people of Philadelphia. Their loyalty is to the Democrat Party.
Boom!
Oh, please, please. I'll answer 3 questions, one at a time.
I can't hear the questions either, so.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. Wiener? Who is a winner or a cheater? Oh, is he a winner or a cheater? Well, that's what we want to find out. We have a right. I mean, here's what I can say about this evidence. This evidence is overpowering in that it suggests.
What a question.
We need a very, very
What
detailed.
a question. I mean, what
You
kind
have
of
to find
reporter
out
asks a
exactly how
question?
many ballots
Is
implicated.
Biden a
How many
winner
ballots
or
are
is he a
inspected?
cheater?
The estimates I have so
How
far.
about a question
we
like,
haven't finished this investigation.
how many more witnesses do you
About
have?
150 to 200,000 ballots.
You know, how long is this
About
investigation going to
300,000
take?
ballots in Pittsburgh. It may be more. It may be less.
How
That's
valid
very
are these
Because
witnesses?
the margin of victory.
Who are they? Are they
after
just
being
your
beat by
hirees?
800,000 was only about 40,000. And it's a little odd that every vote from Tuesday on was all for the one candidate. There's also a very strange thing that happened, which will be part of our case. At some point during the process, when the lead of President Trump reduced from something like 50,000 to 30,000, at the time it was at 50,000, 94% of the vote had been cast. When we got to 30,000, it was only 90% of the vote cast. Now, I can get experts to tell you how that happens. That happens because, think about it, you increase the denominator. What do you increase the denominator with? New ballots. Nobody was informed of new ballots, unless people were writing them up.
Yeah, so
This will be a
basically,
very, very-
basically what he said, this is like the second time I heard it. The first time I didn't really get what he said. At some point, they were at 94% of ballots counted, and then suddenly they dropped back down to 90. That's because somebody dumped a truckload of ballots into the mix, which meant there were more to count, which meant the amount left to count went from 6% to 10%.
Very strong case. And I know you won't accept it because of your hateful biases, but let's see if you can try thinking rational.
See, when you see this press conference, you have hope that
Poll? Because they don't decide the election. The call for Joe Biden isn't. Who was it called by? Oh my goodness, all the networks. Wow. All the networks. We have to forget about the law. Judges don't count. All the networks thought Biden was going to win by 10%. Gee, what happened? Come on, don't be ridiculous. Networks
he's
don't
on
get to
fire.
decide elections.
He's just on
What
fire.
to do?
These reporters are idiots. They're idiots.
Of course, courts set aside elections when they're illegal. In this particular case, I don't know if there's enough evidence to set aside the entire election.
Oh, he knows.
Certainly not around the country, maybe in Pennsylvania. However, there certainly is enough evidence to disqualify a certain number of ballots. The ballots that were not properly inspected should be thrown out. And that number of ballots should be taken out of the count.
Ooh, and that would
That
give
could
Trump
affect
the
the
win.
election. I can't hear two people at once. I'm sorry. That's a whole new issue. That's a whole new issue that we're just developing. Seems to be a significant number of ballots, and there seems to be a significant number of. I shouldn't say significant. There seem to be 3 or 4 very credible witnesses that there was backdating going on, and there are direct witnesses for that. But I'm sure you'll call that not evidence. Not you, the general mob.
Yeah. So, I mean, as you can see, Rudy seems pretty confident they're going to get somewhere with this. Even if Trump doesn't jam up the works and get the presidency bestowed upon him by either the Supreme Court or the congressional backup plan, the Democratic machines in all these major cities have been exposed. And they're all running for cover like cockroaches. That's going to impact elections for decades to come. Because the Democrats are going to be forced to pass new election reform. Nancy Pelosi already said it. Now, yes, she's going to try to game the system as much towards Democrats as possible, but there's only so much she can do. Especially with a Senate controlled by Republicans.
I can be a law professor. The case that we would file, many cases are going to be filed. Some big, some small. This is going to be eventually a big case because it will go beyond Pennsylvania. But right now, the case is a civil rights case.
I mean,
it'll be filed in federal court. I'm sorry. It'll be filed in federal
you're talking
court.
like they could be filing cases all the way up until January 20th. They're never going to have enough time for all this. How are they going to look at all this?
I would guess it would be filed in Pittsburgh.
He's got 50 witnesses just here.
Alleges is very simply that President Trump's campaign was denied its right to a fair count.
We're talking hundreds of thousands of ballots that need to be examined or re-examined or disqualified.
Called equitable remedies. Equitable remedies could include depriving that jurisdiction of a certain number of votes, equal to the number of votes that are proved to be not inspected properly. It could be to set aside an election, but that could be one of the things we ask for, but I think that if you set aside the votes, you would probably remedy the wrong that was done here. Now, it could turn out as we go beyond Pittsburgh and we go beyond Philadelphia, and we have a little bit of evidence elsewhere in another Democratic part of the state that the same thing was going on, that it might spread to there. Where I do see it spreading, however, is sometime next week, unless I'm wrong, I think there'll be a similar case in Atlanta where similar things are going on.
Spaghetti-o.
Republican inspectors showed up. They expected to inspect.
These guys were ready for this. They were ready.
And they were uniformly kept out.
They had lawyers ready. They went down there.
Remember, Atlanta had to do the same thing you had to do.
They had teams of guys ready.
Because on election night he had lost. And he was down by a very good margin with only 85% to go.
They were ready with these guys. Trump's team was ready with these guys. They said, go down there, inspect, make sure it's a good election. They knew the Democrats were going to pull something like this. They had to. If they were stuffing the ballot box, if they let these guys inspect, they would have had all sorts of problems. So they kept them out, hoping they'd go, well, we'll keep them out because them's the rules. We make the rules. Oh, no, they're suing us.
Something very similar happened in Michigan, Wisconsin, can't say Arizona, but in almost every state where President Trump had a lead going into the end of election night, some of the leads looking almost mathematically impossible to undo with the 5%, 10%, 20% of the vote. In almost all of those, this practice was followed. And I'm right now trying to find, did we get to see any ballots that we use for that
People
purpose?
are going to jail, man. And almost all of them are Democrats.
Nationwide lawsuit. So it could affect more than one state. But right now, the one that it definitely affects.
We're talking months.
The state of Pennsylvania.
It takes months to do stuff like this.
It's not the only infirmity in this state.
They're never going to get it done in a month and a half.
No question about it. We get any number of complaints of that. We have a very serious problem with backdating of ballots, including 4 witnesses now who are testifying to that. Whether that becomes part of this lawsuit or it's something separate, that isn't developed as fast as this has. One last question.
I know, John. It's a long press conference. Either way, even if Trump loses this, the Democratic machines are severely damaged. They're going to lose some of these cities. They're going to lose a bunch of these counties. They're going to lose control. Half of their party hacks are going to end up in prison.
Like
the rest of them are going to be running scared.
Isn't it? They're not in charge of Philadelphia. How would... I'm glad they didn't see widespread fraud. That was in Republican counties. I don't think there was fraud in Republican counties.
These reporters are just unbelievable. They're so partisan.
Well, then let them come and tell me that. I haven't found one who's willing to tell me that. Let them give me an affidavit under oath, under penalty of perjury. You're telling me these people are lying?
See, these aren't reporters' questions. Jones barking at the reporters. Yeah, good dog.
I've spoken to about 50
good doggy.
people.
I mean,
I have statements.
I wish I could
25
see
who've
the
spoken to
guy
50.
yelling at him.
Every single
Come here, you wanna
inspector.
come over here? Get him, Joe. Get that reporter.
No. I didn't speak to them. Are you the lawyer for the other side, by the way? Well, you should get paid for it. The reality is that nobody has come forward, even though I've called the state party, the city party. I've asked, is there anyone that wants to come forward and say that there's anything unusual about the man in charge of this whole process, who watched the whole thing, has already come forward and given us a signed statement that no one got a chance to inspect. Now, unless this man had a secret opportunity to do it, there was one person in charge of all these people. He was there constantly for both days. Not a single Republican got a chance to view a single ballot.
Yeah, and so you should definitely watch the rest of this press conference. And the thing is, if you're one of these Democrats or one of these poll watchers, you should seriously consider coming forward now. Look, I know you don't like Trump and you really think Biden will be the better choice and yada, yada, yada. But we cannot even have a country unless we have elections that people believe. Okay? This is undermining the entire process. You are undermining the entire process. You may have felt, oh, so virtuous and righteous, dumping those Trump voters. No, you were doing something very, very bad. Come forward, confess, and then, they'll go easy on you. You probably won't do any time, and you could throw your supervisors under the bus. Tell them you got caught up in it. You thought that was, the way to go or whatever. But if you don't come forward and they catch you, they're going to throw the book at you. Because if Rudy doesn't throw the book at you, if the Trump train doesn't get into the White House, the Biden administration will be forced to. Because those guys can't save you. They'll go, we didn't tell them to do that. They did it on their own. Throw them in jail. They won't help you. They'll want you to get a heavy sentence so they could say, see, we're good people. We didn't rig an election. We put people in jail for doing that kind of stuff. That's exactly what's going to happen at a local and national level. You got to come forward now, if anything, to save your own ass. Save your ass. Don't go to jail for 3.5 years because you did this. Tell people now. You'll be a hero. You'll be a hero to the right and left. Because these Democratic machines are just what Rudy said. They've been running Philadelphia into the ground for 65 years. They can't pay their bills. The city is broken. It has been broken for decades. And it's corrupt. The police are corrupt. The local politicians are corrupt. Everything's corrupt in Philadelphia. You could help us get new people in. Look, it doesn't matter Democrat or Republican. If it's a Democratic stronghold that's been run by Democrats for decades, they're going to be corrupt. If it's a Republican stronghold that's been run by Republicans, it's probably going to be corrupt too. because they don't have any reason to be responsive to their constituency. So they get antsy and they start doing little side deals. They get worse and worse and worse. The Democrats in most of these major cities are that problem. And the bigger problem is now that corruption's starting to spread to a national election. These are the big population centers. We can't have them gamed to put a president in one or another. It's not just going to end with Trump. You're going to have a Republican do the same thing. Look at the 2000 election. Okay? There were shenanigans. They pushed it. And then we got 8 years of George W. Bush. By far, the world's worst president. By far. By any metric. Can't even argue it. Don't even bother. So, watch this. It's on The Independent or C-SPAN if you want to see it. Stop every 10 seconds. And good luck to Rudy. I hope this really goes through. And I think this is Trump's path to victory. Victory!